Hello everyone, here in this practice we are going to learn how to create a table. We have here 5 practices. Create a table called dept with 2 columns. Dept ID, the data type is number of 7, and dept name, the data type is varchar 250. So we can use a create table statement to create dept table. Open brace and specify the columns definition. We have dept ID as number of 7, and we have also dept name, and the data type is varchar 250. Close the brace of the table and run the statement. As we can see, table dept created. The second practice here, check the table structure using SQL developer and using describe command. We can use describe command, desc or describe, and then the table name dept, and run the statement. So as we can see, the table contains 2 columns, dept ID number of 7 and dept name, which is the varchar 250. We can use also SQL developer to view the structure of the table. As we can see, our table is not listed here. We can click on tables and then refresh. Here we go, this is our table dept. Just one click on the table and this is the structure of the table. This is the column name, dept ID, which is number of 7, and dept name, which is varchar 250. Let's go back to the practices. Here in the third practice, create a table called EMP with 4 columns. EMP ID, number of 8, last name varchar 250, hire date as date, default sys date, dept ID as number of 7. So we can use create table statement, EMP, open a brace, and then define the columns. We have EMP underscore ID number of 8, and we have last underscore name varchar 250, and we have also hire underscore date default, and the default is sys date. As we learned before, default is used during insert statements. If you don't specify a value for the hire date during inserting records to the EMP table, the default value here, which is the sysdate function, will be used to generate a value for the hire date column. The fourth column in the table, which is dept underscore ID, which is number of 7. Once finished the create statement, highlight and click run. So as we can see, table EMP created. We can go here to tables and click refresh. So this is our table EMP. Just one click on EMP and this is the structure of the table. We have here 4 columns, EMP ID, which is number of 8, last name varchar 250, hire date is date, and the default here, as we can see, is sysdate, dept ID number of 7. We can also use describe command to view the structure of the table EMP, describe EMP, and here we go, this is the employee ID number of 8, last name, and so on. Last thing here in the practice, insert a record in the EMP table and don't put a value for the hire date column. So we can use insert statement. Insert into the table is EMP. We want to specify a value for EMP ID for the last name column and for dept underscore ID. Values for EMP ID, for example 1, for last name Tom, for dept ID, for example 100. So here, as we can see, we don't specify a value for the hire date. If you run this insert statement, one row inserted, as we can see. Try to select from the table, select star from EMP. So this is the value EMP ID 1, this is the last name Tom, this is department ID 100. As we can see here, the hire date is 10 of February 2021. As we don't specify here a value for the hire date, it used the default value, which is sysdate function, to generate a value for the hire date column, which is in this case the date of the system. So the default option for the column can be used to generate a value for the column if you don't specify a value during the insert statement. So in this practice, we learned how to create a table. I hope this video was informative for you, and thank you for watching.